Monitoring Azure Active Directory. In this video, we'll take a look at monitoring Active Directory and specific approaches and things that we should bear in mind as a solutions architect when we're talking about PIM, Privileged Identity Management, and Azure Identity Protection. Let's talk about Azure AD monitoring. Monitoring is really important activity to do. We also know that in the modern identity-centric world, we need to ensure that we are regularly monitoring the behaviors and patterns of our identities. So as far as monitoring is concerned, we get different kinds of reports. There are security reports, activity reports, and then reports from Azure Monitor. We spoke about this in the Azure Identity Protection section, where we can identify risky users, risky sign-ons, etc. So even if you're not using premium licenses, you can still get some sort of information from this section. So if I scroll down to the bottom a little bit and then click on security and then click on risky users and risky sign-ins under report, this is where you'll get that information from. Similar to risky users, you can also get the risky sign-in logs. So we are looking at proactive form of identification of risk here. We are measuring the risk level at the time actual sign-in takes place. We can then either block the user or allow them after the multi-factor authentication is correctly authenticated. Again, higher the licenses, more details you'll get about the risk. The users that are flagged as risky is something that you will see in the risky users section. Azure AD Identity Protection comes with P2 licenses. This also means that you will get lots of information with P2 license. So with P1 license, you may get very basic information about the risk, but with P2 licenses, you'll get a lot more information like the user's geographical location, the device they are using, the Active Directory location attribute, multi-factor authentication details, etc. Another report that you can see in Azure AD is the activity reports. Another report that we can see in Azure AD is the activity reports. This is under the monitoring section, and you can see it in the form of sign-ins, audit logs, and usage and insights. Let's take a look at audit logs. You will be able to see this information regardless of the licenses you have. This tells us what sort of actions have occurred in my tenant. This is more like a trace and tells us about all the interactions that have happened with your tenant. Another monitoring log is the sign-ins log. This tells us information about all the sign-ins that have occurred in our enterprise applications. So we get information about the usage patterns. Have the users satisfied conditional access from where they are signing in? What resources are they accessing when they are signing in? What applications are they accessing, etc. This feature really needs Azure Active Directory premium licenses, and that means that it is not available for the free version of Azure AD. Another important place is usage and insights. So this is where you can get the reports about the usage of your applications, activities of your federated applications, and any activities related to authentications. This also needs a premium license. With the last option here, which is authentication method activity, you will be able to see the users that are registered for MFA, users registered for self-service password reset, users who have registered and enabled for SSPR, and users who can reset their own passwords. So these are certain patterns and numbers that you can see when you push MFA and SSPR across your enterprise. At times, you may want to integrate this piece of monitoring with a third-party solution or route these logs to a log analytics. That's something that you can do in the log section. So if you have integrated Azure AD monitoring with log analytics, well, you will be able to use the query feature of log analytics and get more information and insights out of it. We do not need a premium license for this. All we gotta do is enable log analytics for our tenant. In the diagnostic settings, we would be able to add a diagnostic setting and choose to either archive to a storage account, stream to an event hub, or send to log analytics. By default, if you're not using premium licenses, then your data, which is specifically the audit logs, is stored only for 7 days. And sometimes this is very less when you want to investigate with things and want to find out what has happened in your environment. You may want to archive to a storage account, probably archive the audit logs and archive the sign-in logs as well. In that case, you can move the slider left to right, and 0 means unlimited, and maximum number that you can get is 365 days. If you have Azure AD premium licenses, then you can store the data for 30 days by default. So if you're sending information to log analytics, you can capitalize on the log analytics queries and run certain deep queries on the sign-ins as well as on the audit logs. So in this lesson, we learned about monitoring Azure Active Directory, the options we have, and where in Azure Active Directory tenant we should go and look at security reports, activity reports, and the reports from Azure Monitor.